A leader is someone who demonstrates what is possible. Mark Yarnell said that once. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 44, your leadership flight path to success. Thor Conklin. Welcome one, welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, your weekly leadership podcast, here for one reason only, to make you a better leader. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host and founder, Scott McCarthy, and thanks for coming out. I truly appreciate you taking the time to download this podcast or stream it, however you listen to it, and listen to what I have to say, and more importantly, what my world-class guests have to say. If you're new to this show, you've come across a podcast which is designed to make you a better leader. I take my 20-odd years of leadership experience, the bulk of which come from my service in the Canadian Army, and I go out and find the best guests I can find and that the world has to offer to make you a better leader. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you're a small business, big business, nonprofit, government, stay-at-home parent, it doesn't matter. We all need leadership in our lives, and that's why you're here. Today, I got a great show lined up. Great guest, Thor Conklin, but I'll get to him in a minute. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about today, just a couple of little announcements, okay? and the big thing is the Moving Forward Leadership Mastermind group in Facebook. I know thousands of you listen to this podcast on a weekly basis. Yet the mastermind group is relatively small compared to those numbers. So why aren't you in there? And you're probably wondering what's in it for me. Well, what's in it for you is that all the guests I invite to come and be part of that mastermind. So Thor, the guest you're going to listen to today, is in that mastermind, answering questions, having discussions around leadership. I'm in there answering questions, posing questions, putting up articles, etc. And multiple guests. About 80% of the guests I have on the show are in the mastermind. Okay, not all accept, or not all are actually on Facebook, and that's fine. Platform's not for everybody. And maybe you're listening to this and you're not on Facebook, and you know what? That's fine too. But if you want to reach out to me, there's still other ways you can do it. You can email me. You can hunt me down on LinkedIn. You can hunt me down on Twitter. You can, hunt me down on Instagram. If you just go to movingforwardleadership.com and scroll right to the bottom, you'll see all the social links for the podcast, for myself there. There's no reason for you not to be able to reach out and have a conversation with me and have a conversation about leadership. Anyway, that's enough about me today. Let's talk about my guest, Thor. Thor is an entrepreneur, a profitability consultant, a host of his own podcast, which is named the Peak Performers Podcast. He's got a talent for slicing through and cutting away garbage, okay? Thor is a no BS guy. He does not hold things back, and he tells it exactly how it is. And you guys probably can understand why he and I get along so well. He's got this ultimate success map, which is what we talk about today on the podcast. And it's basically how he feels people can follow to break through and achieve the next level of success. On the episode today, we talk about, unfortunately, a dark time in his life in what happened to him during 9/11 and how he and his team overcame that, how he developed the ultimate success map, what it is, the individual portions of it, if there's a most important part to the map, and then the biggest challenges that he finds people have in implementing the map and how people can mitigate those challenges. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Thor. In fact, you'll hear the reason for it, but I enjoyed it so much, we recorded the show twice. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me for now. It's time for you to sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Thor Conklin, talking about your leadership flight plan to success. Thor, man, welcome back to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me back on.
And the audience is probably like, back? What the hell is Scott talking about? Huh? Back?
We've never seen this guy.
Yeah, we've never seen this guy. So for the listener there, for you listener, this is actually a redo because the reality is when I went to produce, we had a technical error or technical glitch, and I just said, you know what, it wasn't good for Thor, it was good for myself, and it definitely was good for you, the listener. So I reached out to Thor, and he graciously said yes for a redo. So here we are, round 2, man.
And I'm much better this time as well.
So, like last time, the first thing I like to do with all my guests is for them to give a quick background intro to themselves. So why don't you basically go ahead and do that for us, as far as back as what you think is applicable up to 2001, and then we'll kind of talk about that little part after the fact.
So I grew up in Jersey, and I was always an entrepreneur, I think, at heart. I was always asking questions. I was always curious. I always wanted to see how things worked. Worked as a caddy through high school and had the opportunity to really spend my weekends with some amazing business owners, business leaders. And for 4 hours, lugging bags around the golf course, I was asking questions. What's your differentiator? What works in business? What doesn't work in business? What's it like to be a businessman? And it really, at a young age, started to develop some very interesting habits and some a sense in me that, look, you could do anything that you set your mind to, but you got to get out there and you got to grind. And I got to the point where I basically spent 2-3 years with one group. One particular guy in particular. And this guy actually wrote my letter to get into school, into college. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, quite an amazing experience.
Yeah, for sure. So you went through college and all that jazz, and you ended up. Where did you start off at after college?
Yeah, I went to St. John's, got my degree in risk management and insurance. Went into the insurance business, spent 15 years there, working in New York. And we specialized in working with private equity firms. So it gave me an opportunity to see a diverse group of businesses, because as the private equity firms purchased these businesses, we then acquired the insurance and risk management piece. So I traveled around the world for a period of, close to 15 years and really got an opportunity to see some really diverse industries, which, later I didn't realize I was setting the foundation for what I do today. Now I'm able to go into businesses and, it didn't really matter what the business is now. Chances are I've seen just about everything from gun manufacturers to distribution to automobile to high tech, service industries. So it really set up a great foundation for what we do now.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. And much like myself, I've bounced all around the world doing what I do. And you kind of get to see, you get to work with other government departments, and now I get a broader scope and understand exactly how the government as a whole works. And it's just like, totally get it, and can definitely help people and putting pieces together and advise people on that jazz. So fully understand. So just want to bounce forward to 2001. So where you were owner of your own business? I can't remember exactly. Were you owning your own business at that point?
Yeah. In 1996, I moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. I had gotten to the point where I kind of came to a crossroad, and I was aggravated with how my job was basically taking me away from my family nonstop. And it was the second Halloween in a row that we were working on a due diligence deal. The deal was already killed earlier in the day, but we were still at our desk working till 9, 10 o'clock. My kids were young, and I said after that event, I said, that's it. I'm not going to have somebody else dictate to me how I spend my life and how I raise my family. So in 96, an opportunity came up to come down here to Atlanta for a 2-year period. 2 years turned into 4 years. It was a great job. I was a global risk manager for a pulp and paper company. Every Friday, I was taking out our client to play golf. It almost got boring because once you kind of get the thing working, it's like, this is not really a full-time job, but it was a great gig. So it was time to really move on and start doing something. I was young at that point. And I was going to go back to New York. And I said, I don't really feel like going back to New York. A competitor came after me and said, would you come head up our Southeast region for us, move to Charlotte? So I'm like, I'll look into that. I'll probably move that in that direction. And then one of the largest private equity firms in the world called, who was a client of mine, and said, would you consider coming on as an employee or setting up your own company? And we're going to outsource all of our portfolios so you can manage those worldwide. Well, their portfolio companies at the time, they had 10 companies, that had combined revenue of $12.7 billion. So these were some major, major companies that they wanted me to take over and manage for them from a risk and insurance standpoint. So that phone call doesn't come, but once in a lifetime.
Yeah, no doubt. I was just like, sounds like it's pretty well set right there.
Yeah. So I said, okay, I'll take this meeting. So I flew up to New York, met with them for about 15, 20 minutes. They kind of laid out what they were looking for. Gave me the option of becoming an employee or setting up my own company. I chose to set up my own company. They then gave me about 12 minutes to go into a conference room, come up with a business plan, name the company, and tell them how much I was going to charge. They moved quick, so it was pretty interesting. So private equity risk consultants was devised in about 12 minutes. They had booked all my time, and I was off to the races. That's the way all businesses work, right? You set it up in 12 minutes, and you're fully booked within the next couple minutes, and you're off to the races. Of course, all the business don't start that way, but my first one happened to start that way.
Yeah, I was going to say, moving forward leadership for everybody if there has not started that way. I'm not fully booked up within 12 minutes.
It's worked that way either. It's like you start it, you come up with the concept, and then you hunt around for clients for many months. But it was a decision that was extremely important because on September,
100%.
My office used to be in the World Trade Center, the South Tower of 105th floor. So when the trade centers were attacked that day, I fortunately was not there. Unfortunately, I lost a third of my team. My team was there. So I lost a third of my team on September 11th.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's hard stuff. I remember when we talked first time I was telling you, I was in Canada or Afghanistan, and I was in our command post for a shift, and it's computer screens and all that jazz. And my team, we were a pretty small team, only 8 guys. And so they came back, and we actually had a rough day. It was probably one of the hardest days of my tour. We lost 6 Canadians that day. And, and the team walked in and said, all right, boys and girl, because we had a female on our team, like, have a seat. Right. And, obviously none of them were part of my team, but still every casualty we took, doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what the flag was, really. If there was a ramp ceremony to be had, that's how we extricated the remains. Something called a ramp ceremony, where we all formed up on the ramp, and the body was marched onto the aircraft, which basically ultimately would take them home, and we would pay our final respects. So, Canadian, American, British, New Zealander, Australian, we all went to those. So, but yeah, that's it's tough. It's not easy. So, one of the biggest things I think you would have had to battle during that time would be reuniting what the team you had. So how did you manage to basically get your team back together after that?
One thing, I've always been good in crisis, in a moment when action needs to be taken. It's just something I guess is in my DNA. I don't know where it came from. But when things are going chaotic, the world slows down for me. And I get very focused, and I'm very good in those situations. So it was a time where we were trying to figure out who was alive and who was not. So it was in the beginning, the first couple of days was taking names and trying to find people. We had not only lost people, but we had lost files and everything else. I mean, they were.
Hey, your office was destroyed, essentially, right?
And it was before, a lot of the cloud backup was already, in place today. So it was really you had to put aside your emotions for a moment. I traveled back to New York. I went to more funerals than I care to ever attend ever again. But at the same time you're grieving, you knew that there was a job that needed to get done, and there were clients out there that were being affected, and they had some real business issues going on at the same time. So you just, I don't want to say you compartmentalize it, but you just learn to carry on. That job needed to get done, and he took care of the families, took care of the people, and at the same time, I don't think we really did a good job of taking care of ourselves because we were, kind of shell shocked in the process.
Oh, 100% you would be.
And it took years. I mean, I couldn't talk about it for 10 years.
Yeah. The words you in my notes here from last time you used were leaders shine in crisis, and then and as well leaders keep pushing forward, which is basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And I love what you have on your sheet. It says think, act, and achieve. It's in leadership, you've got to take a moment to step back. You've got to think about what's going on. Then you need to act. And it's that movement always constantly forward. I learned from a friend of mine who's an adventure racer. I asked her, I said, when you're in the middle of a jungle and you don't know which way to go, and you've got your compass, basically what they were using back then, they weren't able to use GPS. I said, and there's two paths, and you're running through the jungle in this race that's 800 miles. Do you go right or you go left? She goes, it doesn't matter. So what do you mean it doesn't matter? Thinking where you got to go in there. You don't know. You don't know. I mean, you're in the middle of Borneo, right?
Yeah.
Because the only thing is you got to keep moving forward. It's the teams that stop and start to assess and become bogged down with decision making. Those are the ones that lose. And she explained a scenario where, first of all, anytime when you're moving in the jungle, you're moving forward, or any particular case, is if you keep moving, you're able to see things from a different perspective because the landscape has changed, whether it's adventure racing or in business. And she explained this one time where they actually won the world championship. They took the path. It was the wrong path. They ended up at a raging river. They jumped in the river. They floated downstream at night, which was pretty stupid because they had rapids. And anyway, they passed all the other people because this river basically became their conveyor belt that pushed them past everybody else. So they went the wrong way, but they actually won because they kept moving.
That's an awesome story, Yeah, you just keep pushing forward. The thing that we use in Canadian Army during what we refer to as incident management. So if something happens, right, is often guys talk for the condor moment, and it's kind of like you saying you got to clear. So often people will, it's kind of fight or flight type thing, and some people freeze. They won't even do either or. They won't fight. They won't flight. They'll just freeze. We always refer to the condor moment, i.e., take a moment, breathe, and actually see through the smoke and the fog, and actually, see what's actually going on, and then assess and make your decision on how to move forward and keep, and that could be as long as 2 seconds, depending if someone's shooting at you, or it could be 2 minutes if the situation is deemed to be safe to do so. Like, okay, all right, this is what I need to do, and let's push forward, let's move forward. But ultimately, the end state and the goal is still the same. It's you can't stop. You need to keep moving. And as a leader, a lot of your team, some of your team, especially say this, sad to say it, but the weaker members of your team, the mentally weaker members of your team will freeze, or they'll try to flight. But you kind of keep fighting. And as a leader, it's to get them, in that fight mode and get them pushing forward.
It's one of the things that we do the most with our clients is, we'll go in, we'll do an assessment, and we'll advise, here's some actions that you can take. And a lot of times they turn around and go, will this work? Sometimes we have no idea. It's going to work. If I knew every single thing that I said was going to work, you and I wouldn't be working together. And you get to first, you get better at it, right? I mean, you try some things. There's some things now that you've tried several times and it's like, okay, that sounded good. That doesn't work. You need somebody that's been through the fire. But a lot of times, given the situation, you don't know if it's going to work or not. The point is you're going to try different things. You're going to track, you're going to measure, you're going to assess, and you're going to make adjustments. But you've got to try it. You never know. And it's funny, I mentor some young entrepreneurs, and they think that, once you kind of have enough years under your belt or enough experiences, like you just got the whole thing figured out. And it's like, I got news for you.
You never got it figured out.
Figured out. Exactly. Now I have a lot of experience. Will tell you that some things that will work and some things will not work. And I've got the experience now to know how to track, measure, and adjust. But you never know.
Yeah. It's funny. The whole experience thing, right? And the biggest thing for me, I always say is like, okay, right. You got the experience, and that is amazing. That's absolutely crucial. But just because it worked in one situation doesn't mean it's going to work in every situation. You have to put the context of the situation, the new situation. Take that experience, put it as an overlay to the new situation, and adjust it so that it will work in this context, right? And
Absolutely.
How
quickly technology is changing and marketing.
Oh man, I can't keep up, and I'm a techie.
Right, and things have a way of coming back around as well. People have a time. I had a client about 2 years ago, and they had 30 mailing lists about 35. No, I'm sorry, mailing lists of 50,000 people. They had customers that had purchased from them of 18,000. And they were trying to figure out how to do Facebook ads and Google ads. I'm like, wait a second. You've got 18,000 people that have already purchased from you. Why aren't you talking to them? It was like, they've already purchased.
Yeah. If they purchase from you one time, indication is they will likely purchase again.
Right. So I said, what are they looking for? What do they want? Well, we don't really know. I said, well, why don't you call them? I said, what do you mean call them? I'm like, call them. They're like, on the phone? I'm like, yeah, let's start there. I mean, you could do short wave radio, but let's try the phone right now. I'm like, you have all their contact information, right?
Oh, God.
What am I going to tell them? I'm like, let's start off with, hi, my name's Bob. I'm the owner of X. Thank you very much for purchasing from me before. Is there anything that you could tell me about my business, how to make it better? Don't go and try to sell them something, or just introduce yourself. Just call them it.
Is there a hole in, a need for you that is currently not being filled that maybe I can fill for you? All right.
So he said half of them thought they were getting punked. Seriously, they thought they were getting pumped. They're like, is this Bob from like this big company that's on Amazon? This is the owner? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, people don't do that. Well, maybe this would be a good marketing tool. Let's do what others aren't doing. So is calling a customer on the phone and forming a relationship with that customer a new marketing strategy? No.
Not at all.
Something that's not being utilized today, so now it's working. I had one one person on my podcast, and he's a events promoter, a concert promoter. So he said their biggest draw and strategy right now is putting flyers on cars.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
It's like if people are parked around the venue, they might live in the area. They were doing that back in the 70s, but people stopped doing that. So some things that have worked you can go back to.
I just see some, young kid, teenager, or, just out of high school, snapping a picture of the flyer on the car and throwing it up on Instagram. Like, hey, check this out, what just happened to me.
That's right.
So, obviously you got a lot of experience. Let's change gears here now, Thor. Let's talk about your ultimate success map. And, first off, how did you even develop that thing? How did that come to being?
Well, it started out with an obsession to figure out a formula, a map, a system to follow that could produce consistent results time and time again. Over 18 years as an entrepreneur, the first 5 ventures that I started were all successes. Started them, grew them, sold them, great. So I get to my fifth or sixth one.
5, 6.
I go and buy a manufacturing company because at this point I'm like, anything I touch turns to gold. You know where this story's going. I buy this company. I'm manufacturing in Asia. I'm dealing with a clientele that does not speak English as a primary language. I bought it from a guy that decided to cook the books. When I started looking at inventory in my warehouse, Some of the boxes on the top shelves were empty. Took them to court. Basically, the court said, yeah, I know he's falsified the records, but we really don't get involved in these kind of issues. I'm like,
Nice.
wow, interesting. So he can falsify tax records and business records, make representations to me in a contract, and then there's no,
repercussions.
I'm like, I found a great new business, business to go into if you don't have any scruples. Just sell somebody a company, just make the shit up, and who knows? No one's going to prosecute you for it. So I found myself behind the 8 ball and ended up losing just shy of $1 million before I sold off all the assets and said, I'm done. And I'm like, this really, really hurt.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So I had pieces of this ultimate success map in these books that I were putting together for my kids. It's like, okay, I didn't want my kids to have to go through 30, 40 years of life acquiring information and learning stuff. I'm like, let me give you the cliff notes. I've gone through, life. I've acquired this sort of information. Let me pass it along to you. And that was really the reason I started the podcast, because I realized, one, if I pass these books down to my kids, two people in the world are going to learn what I've learned over 30, 40, 50 years. And why not share it? And, they can listen to the podcast as well. So I'm traveling through the airport in Atlanta. It's called Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. And there on the subway that takes you between the terminals, the map was sitting there on the wall that I'd been looking for. And what was interesting in life, sometimes it's not as clear as what you think it should be. This particular map was reversed. So if you ever find yourself in Atlanta, one of the busiest, I guess the busiest airport in the world, you'll go through and there's a baggage claim T terminal A, B, C, D, E, and F. So if you take this map and you reverse it and you start off with F, you first have to figure out what you want. You got to figure out that vision for your life. Where are you going? Now, in the grand scheme of things, this is pretty logical, right? If we want to create something, we want to go somewhere, first we got to figure out what we want. Because so often I see, at least in business, that people start running down this lane and go, okay, I want to be X, or I want to create X. I want to buy this company. I did that with my manufacturing company. 4 years into it, I wanted to move out of the state. And I'm like, wait a second, I can't move. I've got manufacturing here. I've got warehouse here. I've got my people here. I was stuck, so to speak. It was not a transportable business. And I couldn't go. And I hadn't really thought through the process. I just was looking at the balance sheet and the P&L and going, this would be a great business to own. So first and foremost, F, figure out what you want. The next one is come up with an efficient and an effective plan. Based on where you are, based on where you want to go, figure out what that plan is. The next step is you've got to make a decision, the D gate. And a decision, so many people consider the decision as like, that's really all that's necessary. But a decision is an internal process or an internal action that doesn't really have any outward movement. And I'll give you an example. Years ago, it was probably about 10 years ago, I wanted to go to Mexico. I got a group of my buddies together. I said, hey, let's go to Mexico in a couple of weeks. They're like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm in. Great. 2 weeks later, it was like, okay, I need the credit cards. And then
whoa.
It's like, whoa,
whoa.
I know I decided I want to go. Right? They were interested. They weren't committed. So a decision, a lot of people say, your life is based on what the decisions that you make. I say BS. It's not the decisions that you make. It's the commitments that you make. Because a commitment is when you actually step up and you actually do something. There's an external action to the commitment. In this particular case, it was the credit card. Get up and actually do something. Once you have the commitment done, then you move on to the B gate. Okay. And this was the piece that I was missing. This is the piece that I didn't have in my notes. And it was the thing that I was seeking. I just couldn't figure out that one missing element. And the B gate is belief systems. You need to check in with your belief systems. And you need to see if there's any conflicting beliefs that, yes, you want to achieve these goals, but you also have some other things that you want to achieve. And are there any conflicts between this? Do you want to achieve this in business or in your life or in your finances? But you've got a belief that you're just not good enough. You can't make it happen. You have self-doubt. So checking in with those belief systems are really important. And they're difficult to do sometimes by yourself. Sometimes it's always good to have somebody that really knows you around you that can check in. It's kind of like you can't see your nose on your face. You can see your hand, but you can't see yourself. So you need somebody sometimes to hold up a mirror. And then the A gate. This is when you start taking action. And at this moment as well, this is where you've got to track, measure, and adjust. And I wasn't tracking. I wasn't measuring. I was adjusting, but I wasn't making the adjustments based off of sound science of what's working, how it's working, and making intelligent pivots. Because what happens sometimes is people start moving, start taking action. They don't get the results. And what do? Well, the plan doesn't work, right? So they go back and they change the plan. They keep moving the target. They keep adjusting the process, and they never take the time to actually track, measure, and adjust. During this phase as well, you've got to make sure that you have consequences for getting the things done, not getting the things done. Extremely important when you start building out your team. If there's no consequences, and this brings up another point as well that we talk about all the time. You've got to have a scoreboard. You've got to have the results. Could you imagine going to a football game? There's no clock, there's no scoreboard, and people are just running up and down the field. It's like, oh, there goes a pass. Well, that was pretty cool. Who's winning? I think we're winning.
Who knows, right?
Go to a football game or a baseball game or any sporting event without a scoreboard. But in our businesses, in our lives, what do? We run around and go, yeah, it's going pretty good. Yeah, sales are good. Revenue's good. Profit's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the stereotypical answer to the stereotypical question. How you doing? I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing good.
Yep. Show me the numbers.
Yeah.
Show me the numbers. And then the next piece that I was missing after taking action is time, the T gate. There's a, what is it? Bamboo. There's a bamboo in Thailand, a specific strain of bamboo in Thailand that takes 7 years after it's planted, the seed is planted, that the actual sprout or spout, or what is not a sprout, a little
sure.
stick,
yeah,
a little stick thing.
The stick starts popping through the ground.
Exactly. It's not a trunk because it's not a tree, but yeah, we'll call it a stick. Before the bamboo actually breaks the ground, it takes 7 years. But once it breaks the ground, it'll grow 2 feet in a week. So what we do so often is we're taking the action. We're checking in with our belief systems. We're tracking, we're measuring, we're adjusting, but we're not seeing any changes in the environment, and we're thinking it's not working. But it's working exactly the way it's supposed to work. It just takes time. You just can't plant the seed, in really any seed, and expect it to just sprout the next day. But in business, we take some action, and we immediately think that it's going to work. It takes time to get that momentum going. Yeah.
So many commonalities between business and your thought process and how we do business. The final destination for us is what we refer to as the end state. Where do we perceive us being at the end of an operation? Decisions are decisions, basically, pretty well. The beliefs. Let's come back to the beliefs after. Yeah. But the action, tracking, measuring, adjusting, absolutely. I think that's probably something that a lot of leaders may not focus a lot on and probably should focus a little bit more time on, because that is what, you have your plan, you're going forward, and, you start deviating, and then you measure, you adjust, and you start getting back on the plan. Right. And often all of a sudden you find yourself like, oh, we went left instead of going right, and we're completely down a completely different business path that we never expected. So, and the time thing you mentioned is so funny. And it's not even just business. I think it's the world today, honestly, that everybody expects results, yesterday. And I refer to as the drive-through culture. Yeah. You pull up, you put your coffee order into the squawk box, and 30 seconds later it's in your hand, and away you're driving away, right? It's just the drive-through culture. But let's just boomerang back to the beliefs, because we had a really good conversation with the beliefs last time. And one thing I definitely would like for you to kind of focus in on and talk about is, how can a leader, expose our true beliefs, and what does that actually come out to be like in the end?
Yeah, it starts with telling the truth. In order to get to a destination, you need to know what the destination is, but you need to know where you are. If I ask, how do you get to Chicago? A lot of times people will say, go east, go west, go north, depending on where they live.
Yeah.
Well, they're different directions. You've got to know where you are, because if you're in Toronto and you want to get to Chicago and someone told you to go north, it would be a long trip before you got to Chicago.
Yeah, no doubt.
Be some polar caps in the way as well. So you got to know, where you've got to know where you start. And beliefs, the best way to uncover beliefs is to ask great questions. Find some great questions. One of the things that, I've got a list of questions that I ask all the time. And one of the ones that I've just implemented just recently that has been a great, great question for me. It is WWTD, right? It's a play on what would Jesus do. So this is, what would Thor do? And it's amazing, because I'll get into a situation and I'll be like, what would Thor? Oh, all right, I know what Thor would do, right? It may not be the easy thing there, but it's always the right thing. It's always what's necessary in that moment. And if you just ask yourself, what would I do? What would the best version of me do right now? You know what the answer is. Do it. A friend of mine just yesterday or the day before, I saw on Facebook, what I absolutely loved. She said, eat as if you love yourself. Take care of your finances like you love yourself. Play full out at work like you love yourself. I'm like, wow, that's really good. Would you take, with food, would you take that next bite of whatever you're going to eat? Would you feed that to the best version of you? Would you feed that to your favorite child, your own child? You as a 6-month-old, would you put that in that person's body? And I think we all have the ability to know what to do. We just lose sight of it because so often we make choices that are easy, choices that are just, there's so much coming at us. Back to leadership, one of the biggest problems with leaders are they don't know how to say no. They say yes to too many things. There's opportunity everywhere. The people that I know that are absolutely killing it in business, they say no to everything. Well, just about everything. To get them to say yes is like pulling teeth. It's funny. I've got a couple friends that are in a business organization that I'm in. One's a billionaire. One is a 100-millionaire kind of person. I don't know. Is that a decamillion? Not a decamillionaire.
Super rich guy compared to me. Let's put it that way.
Right. And they're the top 2 least involved in the organization. I'm like, damn. I said, I think I found the secret to success here. Just don't come to any of the events. They know what to say no to. They're just not spending time. That's not on their radar screen.
Yeah, 100%.
Did I answer your question?
Say again?
I said, did I answer your question? I feel like I went down a rabbit hole there.
I think so. Either way, the conversation is good. That's all that matters in the end, right? But it's funny. Just go back to your friends there you're talking about. And I say to my guys all the time, like, because the organization I command and lead right now is split down 3 different troops we refer to them as. And I'm like, if it doesn't span across one into the other, I don't care.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't care. It's like, it happens all the time. And I'm like, I slowly get tired of it. Like, guys, I don't care. If it's within your troop, you act accordingly. If it spans across yours into another one, now I'm interested because it's across multiple, sub-organizations. And it happens all the time. And emails like, hey, can we do this? I'm like, this affects you and you only. I don't give a shit. Basically, I really don't care. So
Yeah.
No, and it's right. You got to spend your time wisely. It's our most precious commodity, and if we're not using it properly, we see it to be properly, and then you're saying yes to everything. Well, you know what? It boils down to quality over quantity, and if you're stretched out too thin, then you're not going to get quality results, whatever those results are going to be, and then guess what? You're going to start sinking, right?
Yeah. I mean, with our profitability consulting work that we do for clients, the one thing, the most important thing that we do is we eliminate all the noise, all the things that are important but not necessary. And we drill into those just few. If there's more than 3 or 4, we're spending our time, diversified way too much. We want to find the 1, 2, maybe 3 things that CEO, that business owner is going to focus on. Once we get them to focus on those 3 things, 1, 2, 3 things, that's when significant change happens.
Yeah.
Got to get them to the point where they say no. For me, 2018 is about fitness, finance, and fun. That's it. If it's not one of them, it ain't getting done.
I was going to say, you look a little bit fitter since we last talked, man.
Well, I'm running an Ironman, swimming an Ironman, biking an Ironman. I'm doing an Ironman.
Oh,
yeah. I don't ask me why. Well, I do know why. It's not about the Ironman. I'm not, big into. This will be my one and done. For those of you who don't know, it's a 2.4 mile swim. It's a 112 mile bike, and then a marathon. I've never run a marathon. I can't swim 2.4 miles. I can probably do 110 miles on a bike. I've got to combine all those things into 17 hours. And the reason I'm doing it, one, is to get fit and to stretch my mind and my body to do things that I don't think are possible. And quite frankly, what's interesting is it's not going to be so much the race. It's really the training that's really building a muscle that is going to be a lasting muscle. As far as tomorrow morning, I'm getting up at 5:15 to be in the pool at 5:45. I've got other things I'd like to do at 5:15 in the morning. So it's really pushing me to keep my commitments. It's really pushing me to show others. The reason I'm doing it is to really not only stretch me and to get to the point where I can do more and be more, but I want to show people that, at 54, you can do anything you set your mind to. You just got to get out there and just do it.
Hell yeah, man. Good on you. Well done. Yeah. Good. Best of luck.
Thank you.
You're crazy in my books. Anything over a 5 kilometer run, and I'm just like,
Yeah. I'm not really, I don't necessarily enjoy the running, the bike. I like the biking and the swimming. I got to figure out how to do it. So, but
yeah.
I've formed a team around me. I've got my tri coach. I got a swim coach. I've got a nutritionist. I got a chef, chiropractor, acupuncturist, and an alignment specialist. So I built a whole team around me.
That's what you need. That's what you need, right?
Yeah, because my historical thought processes were, if it's to be, it's up to me. And as I got the opportunity to really spend some time in the last 18 months with some amazing entrepreneurs achieving crazy things, it was across the board, and working out with the Navy SEALs, training with the SEALs 2 years ago. It's we. You can go further, faster, and if you don't have a we, it just doesn't work. So 2018, in addition to being about fitness, fun, and finance, it's if it's to be, it's up to we. So I've been out there building my team, and it's a lot more fun too.
Oh yeah,
it eliminates all the process. Tomorrow morning I don't wake up and go, okay, I'm doing an Ironman. What do I do today? No, there's already in the app. It already tells me what I have to do, when to do it. It's just like, cool. You know what? I relinquish control of that. Just tell me what's going on.
It's it's life. It's business. It doesn't matter. Any major goal that you set up, regardless if it's personal or professional, it takes a team and a group of people standing behind you to achieve it. right? And that's ultimately what the moral of the story is. I like to we kind of got off track, a little tangent there, but it was a good one. I like it. We're having the podcast, plus we're kind of catching up at the same time. It's pretty funny. What I'd like to do is just, go back to the map. So you get your final destination, your decision, your beliefs, the action, the time. Of those, is there a most important part to it? And if so, why?
Yeah. The commitment phase is something that's not just done once.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that you're making those commitments every single day. I call them micro commitments. I wake up every day and I make a micro commitment or micro commitments of what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do that day. Consequences for good behavior and consequences for bad behavior, all in that C group. Extremely important. The belief systems will trip you up and will kill your execution. You've got to have somebody around you helping you with the belief systems. Trying to do that on your own. You can do it through questions. Ask great questions. But having someone that can help you through that process is extremely valuable. Track measuring and adjusting and having a scorecard. Those are the most important.
Awesome. So I guess the kind of final question regarding the map would be, when you're implementing this or, helping organizations, businesses, whatever, implement this, is there a more challenged part to the implementation, i.e. one of those different stops? And if so, what can people do to mitigate that?
Most people will try to throw too much into it and be focused on too many things.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. And the other thing is, and I'm going to, at the end of the show, I'll offer your listeners something, is a lot of times they spend time trying to fix the problem that isn't. They think it's the problem and it's only a symptom.
Yeah.
And if you go around trying to fix a symptom, all you end up doing, it's like the whack-a-mole game, right? The mole pops its head up and you try to whack it, but by the time you go to whack it, it's already gone. Another mole shoots up in another hole.
Yeah, makes sense.
They try to accomplish too much, and then what really is at the root of it, they haven't figured that out. So it's always about getting in there and peeling back the onion. For example, the biggest thing for my physical fitness, staying in shape, and being at a body weight that is conducive to this Ironman, comes down to one thing: alcohol. I was hoping that it was going to be broccoli, but it was alcohol. and I'll explain that. If I go and I have 2 or 3 glasses of wine with dinner the night before, the next day, the first thing that I want is some sugar to reset my body, because it had a bunch of the sugar in the wine. Now it's craving it. So the next day, what do I want? Hamburger, French fries, and a Coke. That then starts a cycle of an addiction back to the sugar. If I can eliminate the alcohol or greatly reduce that, then I don't have those cravings. That's at the root issue of all of my dietary struggles related to weight. In business, it's about getting out there and getting emails to potential prospects, asking for referrals, and talking to people in my network. Just the number that it comes down to, where if I do X number of emails, X number of meetings, that's going to result in X number of clients. You got to find out what that action is, what that critical action is. People talk a lot about KPIs. KPIs is the middle step. That is not the action. Figure out what that first critical driver or critical action is that then produces the KPI, the key performance indicator, that then produces the result. And spend your time focused on the critical drivers, critical actions, not the end results.
Makes absolute sense, right? Yeah. Numbers are great, but you actually got to look at the deeper meaning of them. And it's funny because I do something similar every year at Christmas time. I break out, all of our KPIs throughout the year. But the thing is like, listen, guys, these are what, your actions, this is the end result of the actions and put it in context for everybody, right? So, no, it makes absolute sense for sure. Thor, man, it was great chatting again. It was great catching up too. Is there anything that we missed that you would think of at this point that we haven't really covered regarding to your ultimate success roadmap?
Let's see. Form a streak. It's not necessarily in the success map, but as you're tracking, measuring, form a streak. If you've got 2 or 3 days of actions that you're continuing to do, you're getting them done, track that. Color them in green. I do it in green, and then I track. Okay, how many days have I gotten out the emails that I'm supposed to get out each day?
Yeah.
Once you get that streak, you get into a habit of wanting to keep that thing going. I use a strategy of 1, 2, 3, go. You're sitting there. You've got to move on to the next thing. I use my timer on my phone a lot, where I set the timer, and I'll be processing email for 12 minutes. I got 12 minutes to process emails. It's not going to turn into 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Create a time barrier. You see the clock behind me?
Yeah.
I set that every single month. That's the days, hours, and seconds that are left in March. So it's backwards, but it's 27 days, 11 hours, 57 minutes, and 24 seconds. It's going to be gone. Tomorrow it'll read 26 days. Never to be had again. Use those time. Use that time wisely.
Yeah, no, that's awesome because for me personally, I have a tracker which I update every couple times a week, right? And I got various goals and metrics I got put in there, and for this podcast, there's multiple in there, and one of them is to promote myself, or not promote myself. Sorry, wrong words. Just publish something meaningful on social media every day, right? And everybody needs to understand, like, this is my side hustle, right? I got a full-time job. I'm commanding 200 soldiers in the Canadian Army, like. Shit gets a little crazy sometimes, right? But still, I open up that and I'm like, wait now, have I the past 3 days gone ahead and achieved, and I tick it off, and it gives me very measurable and gives me percentages, and there's a whole load of goals. I got maybe close to a dozen in there, and it's based off of the average week, how many times I want to achieve whatever it is I wanted to achieve, and it gives me and based off of my actions throughout the week, it spits out averages, and they're grouped in various different groupings, and those are spit out averages as well. And it's like, so that now I have a metric which I can look at. I'm like, all right, last week was not as good as the week before. Scott, you got to up your game. Or it's like, no, this week I'm rocking it, right? So it's very similar. And yeah, people in business, you kind of got to do that. And as you get more successful, I find it kind of goes both ways, right? Success compounds itself, but as well, failure also compounds itself, right? And it'll snowball. So no, it's great words for sure. Thor, man, it's great having you on again. Great catching up. Flip the mic over to you. Feel free to give yourself a shameless plug again. Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah,
all that jazz.
I'll add two more things. If you want to keep your commitments, tell the world. Go on Facebook, post, and tell them what you're doing. I told everybody I'm running an Ironman. I got no choice. I mean, I've got to do it. How can I work with clients and tell them that we're going to help them keep their commitments if I can't keep my own?
Yeah.
I mean, I got no choice, which is good. Get leverage. Tell the world what's going on. I got a client that wants to do 1,000 push-ups in a day. He's up to 700 push-ups. I saw that he was kind of waning a little bit, so I posted on his wall, hey, make sure you reach out to Josh this week and encourage him. He's got to do 700 push-ups by the end of the week. He called me up. He's like, I can't believe you did that. Like, well,
that's accountability, right?
Now we got some leverage.
Yeah.
So that's really important. Get yourself an accountability manager if you're not getting those commitments done. You can find me, thorconklin.com is the website. Thor Conklin is LinkedIn, Facebook. You'll find me with Thor Conklin. I'm fortunate to have like the first 13 pages on Google, so there's no problem finding us. And I wanted to give your listeners a gift as well. And that is, if anybody sends me an email, 50 words or less, of the biggest problem that they're suffering in their business, I will write back to them a 4-point process on how to completely eliminate that issue, or at the very least, greatly reduce it. You're not going to end up on some sort of drip campaign or something like that. I'm going to write back to you. Bear with me because I get a lot of these emails in, and I respond to each one of them. So I'd be more happy to do that.
That's truly appreciated. I'm sure the listener there is going to appreciate it as well. For listeners there, as always, it's easy. Just go to movingforwardleadership.com/44, as this is episode 44. So just go to movingforwardleadership.com/44, and that'll take you to the show notes, and right at the bottom there. Actually, not right at the bottom, but if you scroll there, all the Thor's various resources, links, and all that jazz will be in there, and make it easy, including his email address, so that you can just shoot him an email with that gracious offer. Thor, again, man, thanks for coming out. It was great, chatting, catching up, and talking about all things leadership and your success, Matt.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, listeners, stand by, and we'll have my key takeaways from my interview with Thor here today. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed that episode there with Thor and I. Note that I totally acknowledge the audio quality still didn't come out perfectly. I'm not sure what the problem is between him and I, but it was good enough for us to get this episode, get it up and running. Anyway, the key takeaways from today's episode for you all, right? And I have 3 of them. 3 kind of, and an additional one from one. Anyway, the first one is leaders shine in crisis, right? And I talked about this a long time ago. I think it was like episode 2 or 3, if you want to go back that far. Crazy. Anyway, leaders shine in crisis. You have to shine in a moment of crisis. We were discussing this when Thor was talking about the 9/11 attack and what happened to his company. But as a leader, you have to shine. This is the moment when everybody's looking at you to make the decisions. And on top of that, leaders keep pushing forward. The only way you're going to get through a crisis is by pushing forward through it. Now, depending on what the crisis is, pushing forward through it will look differently, right? Not everything is a cookie cutter. Not everything follows the exact model or plan. You have to look at every individual situation with that situation's overlay onto what you're trying to achieve. So, for example, if it's a financial crisis, to keep pushing forward is to keep finding new ways to achieve revenue. If it's a crisis such as a terrorist attack, keep pushing forward means putting your people in a safe spot, wherever that may be. Anyway, to sum up, leaders, they shine in crisis. The second key takeaway I got from Thor is that we need to learn how to say more, say no more than yes. Your time is critical. Your time is valuable. We only have so much time in a day. We only have so much time in a week. You cannot do it all. And I hear this more and more from experts out there. You need to say more no's than yeses. Earlier today, I was listening to a podcast, and the host said, I either say heck yes or heck no. And that's kind of what Thor is getting at as well. So if you don't get excited for whatever it is that you are been offered to do, that someone wants you to do for them, then you should say no to it. Okay? Value your time more than anything else, because it's the one thing you cannot make more of it. And finally, the last key takeaway I got for you today is that accountability is either going to drive or drop your organization. And actually, I talked about this at work during a speech. When there's a lack of accountability in an organization, morale acts as a scapegoat. People will become basically dissatisfied when accountability is not held. Okay? You cannot shy away from doing the hard thing. That is why you are the leader. At times, you need to hold people accountable for the betterment of your organization. Because if not, morale is going to suffer, the team will suffer, and your organization is going to suffer, potentially to the point of its implosion. So keep that in mind. Accountability, absolutely crucial. Well, that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed today's episode between Thor and I. And again, if you want to find the show notes, just head over to movingforwardleadership.com/44 to get all the show notes and links to today's episode, okay? And remember, if you thoroughly enjoy the Moving Forward Leadership, remember R squared S squared. Rate and review. Those things are what podcasters like myself live for, because it shows people out there that we're doing a good job and that other people should listen to it. So R squared, S squared. Rate and review. Subscribe, because you do not want to miss another episode. And if you just go to movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe, I've done it for you really easy if you don't know how to subscribe. And finally, the other S is share. Share this episode. Share the key, go and post this episode on your friend's wall or tweet it saying what your key takeaway was. Okay? And feel free to tag me, Moving Forward Leadership, in it. All right? Share this episode and what you've learned from it so that others can learn from it. That's all I got today, folks. All right? As always, keep pushing, keep trying, keep moving forward. Take care now.